Hey everybody, Cody Menz here. I have another video going over what I think most likely will be the new Battle Pass tanks being added in with 1.16, the update coming out very shortly here in World of Tanks PC. Battle Pass, it should be kicking off. You know, they have 3 new 3D styles that they've already kind of teased a little bit with the Leopard 1, T110E4, and also the Kronwagen. But they haven't really said if they're going to add in any new tier 9 reward tanks. Last season we saw them add in the Kunstpanzer and also the K91 PT. And then prior to that we already had the AE Phase 1, Object 777 version 2, and also the Char Future 4. So if they stick with the same kind of, I guess, you know, template, we're possibly going to be seeing 2 new tier 9 reward tanks. Just so happens that as of yesterday on February 5th, Wargaming put out a little update to the common test server, which most likely we might see something this upcoming week with the second iteration of the common test, or even like a promo video, stuff like that, on what the tanks will be. And it just so happens that 2 tanks, which have been in the game files for quite some time, the Lorraine 50t and also the Cobra, were essentially nerfed and, you know, maybe finally balanced. There's also other tanks changed. You have a tier 10 and also tier 8 and some other tanks as well, which will most likely be, you know, released via other events. But just focusing on the battle pass here, what are the most likely tanks? Based off of that, kind of pushes you to believe it could be the Cobra, Lorraine 50t. I kind of am leaning towards that direction with this video. Can't be for sure, this is just all speculation. So currently, you know, with the Phase 1 we have an American Heavy, 777 we have a Russian Heavy, Char Future, French Medium, K91 PT, Russian TD, and then the Kunstpanzer we have a German Medium Tank. So does it make sense for them to release, you know, more Russian tanks? Who knows? Currently in the game files, so let's just get into the comparison tool to see what tanks I have. We have basically 6 tier 9s that are currently in the 1.16 common test server that could possibly be whether it's 1, 2, who knows what, tanks that they add into this battle pass. Some of these might end up being tier 9 premium tanks that they sell, other reward tanks, God knows what. But just focusing on the battle pass, which ones are the most likely to be those? So looking at the list here, like, does it make sense for them, you know, based off of what we already have and what they just changed with the Cobra and Lorraine? We don't have a British tank in the battle pass as an option yet. And honestly, Britain has a lot of tanks in the game already, or UK I should say. You know, it's one of like the core nations with a lot of tank lines. Makes sense to add that. You also have, you know, France here, again, has 2 heavy tank lines, lots of tanks. Yes, we have the Char Future 4. Lorraine makes sense too. You have the UDES 3. We don't have a Swedish tank in the battle pass. This is a Swedish medium. There's a Chinese tank destroyer that's been in the game files for a very long time when it comes to the WZ-120 GFT. That could possibly be it as well. They have been loving to shove Chinese tanks down our throat recently. And then you have 2 more Russian tanks, because why not more Russian tanks? The Object 590, which is a auto reloading or reverse auto reloading Object 590 Russian tier 9 premium medium or reward medium. I can't even say it all. There's so many Russian tanks. And then there's the Object 752. I don't think it would be the 752 because we already have the 777 version 2, which is a heavy. In any event though, jumping into these tanks, what makes them tick, little overview of both or all tanks as fast as I can here. So the Cobra, this tank, really good gun depression. It's got a 4-round autoloader. You know, this tank is fairly interesting. 2 seconds between each shot, standard round. So let me just get into the comparison tool. You guys have seen what the Cobra looks like. Honestly, with the paint job, it looks like a little G.I. Joe tank, to be completely honest. But when it comes to the armor, it's got decent armor up here, but you're going to get penned and shred it anywhere, you know, further down here when it comes to hull down. but we're just going to jump into the comparison tool for the Cobra to go over the gun. So this tank has a standard heat round. So standard heat round, 800 meters per second shell velocity, and overall, when it comes to the penetration, 268, it's actually decent. Now, jumping to the next round is a premium HESH round. Very good shell velocity, you know, a bit over 1,000 meters. 219 penetration, 465 for the average damage. And remember, 4-round autoloader. And then finally is a standard 515 damage, 120 millimeter pen HE round with 800 meters per second. It's actually kind of interesting. I've been saying for freaking years Wargaming should balance, you know, the British and like HESH rounds and stuff for the FE4005 and stuff this way. You have your heat round, or it's easier to look at it this way. Your heat round, you know, lowest damage, highest pen. You have your HESH round, middle damage, middle pen. And then you have your HE round, high damage, low pen. You have 3 usable rounds here. Seems like a very interesting tank. Cool idea, and this is going to be pretty interesting whether this comes out for the Battle Pass or a premium tank. Battle Pass, I think, is more likely just because we don't have a British tank yet, and also if it's a reward tank and, you know, this is a standard heat gun and there's HESH, people are going to spend more money if it's a reward tank because they don't get credits because it's not a premium. So then Wargaming makes more kind of money indirectly in a way. Anyway, though, you know, Cobra, what's the other stats of this tank? Pretty good gun traverse, good gun depression, -10 degrees. Accuracy isn't great. DPM, pretty bad, given that it's an autoloader. Not too surprising there, but DPM is, you know, bad because of that. Armor, again, so like it's got armor on the top kind of forehead, especially with your gun depression. Lower down, though, if people hit you under the gun or your hull, they're going to pen you most likely. Mobility's okay. It's got a good traverse or reverse speed. You know, when it comes to the rest of it, like you do have a good specific power. And your top speed does limit you a little bit. You know, this is a medium tank, so it's not going to be as fast as, you know, a lot of mediums. It's going to be closer to a heavy. It's got a really high traverse speed, though, which is kind of interesting. And camouflage, nothing too surprising, and somewhat low V range for a medium. But yeah, the tank it's pretty cool. I think it's a really interesting tank because of the gun and ammunition. It doesn't really feel like a British tank, though, to be completely honest. But you know, that's where it might fit into the Battle Pass pretty well, because we have some other pretty unique tanks like the 777 in there, AE Phase 1, Kunstpanzer, K91 PT. They're all kind of interesting tanks, and this checks that box. Jumping to the next tank, so Lorraine 50t. This thing is massive. It's labeled a versatile heavy tank. This thing is definitely a heavy. It's freaking gigantic. And when it comes down to it, it's got absolutely no armor since it's based off a Lorraine chassis on the hull. The turret has okay armor. You know, when it comes to the front and stuff, it's got okay armor here, but absolutely, you know, nothing here unless people are gonna be hitting you at a bad angle. This tank, you know, I guess you can say it's comparable to like the AMX M454 line without, you know, having 0 hull armor. But you're looking at just okay damage, high penetration, and getting into the comparison tool here again, just so we can take a look at all the rounds. This tank, you know, it's a little bit easier. It's got okay, you know, premium pen, and then, you know, the HE round's nothing special. So like the gun, yeah, this kind of feels a little lackluster, especially since they nerfed it. You know, 400 damage isn't something special for a tier 9 heavy. It's got good pen, but like, you know, nothing crazy considering, you know, while you do have 10 degrees of gun depression, really good accuracy, your DPM's not, yeah, it's okay. It's nothing, again, great, but it's, you know, this is something I guess feels like lackluster about this tank to me, which, you know, they just nerf it. I don't exactly know why, but when you're kind of looking at the hull armor, it's got crap hull armor. Turret armor, again, it's, you know, it's good, but like, does that make up for, so you see the 250 value, which isn't always the best judgment. Does it make up for the tank having one of the, I guess, largest silhouettes out there? I don't know. You know, that's where, you know, the tank is very easy to hit. And like this one, since they did just change it, like, you know, I guess there is a good chance it's coming, but yeah, this doesn't seem like, you know, the best, I guess, option, you know, out there. But, you know, maybe Wargaming knows something that we don't. All right, so let's swap over to the comparison tool again here. Excuse me here. I was just double checking tanks.gg to where Lorraine 50t, it does have this all the way in the back. I was double checking. It does have a cupola weak spot, and also you can get penned above and parts around the mantlet. Let's jump back into this though, because I want to. So going down here, when it comes to the mobility of this tank though, it's large, but it's freaking fast. High top speed, specific power is okay. It's got no camo and just okay view range, but it is somewhat fast like a lot of other French tanks. So this one I'm kind of lackluster about. I kind of hope they don't add it just because it seems a little weird, but you know, who knows. Next up though, UDES. So this tank is your, you know, prototypical Swedish tank, where it does have the hydropneumatic suspension on it, which is pretty, you know, fun, interesting, you know, cool. And you know, the tank actually, you know, it's like you're taking essentially the TD and you're putting a turret on top of it. It's got no armor really to speak of, except for the angles. You can get some ricochets and stuff. Heat will most likely chew you up. But overall, you know, this tank, you know, I could see them adding it because, you know, we don't have a Swedish tank. But, you know, this one, kind of like the Lorraine, it doesn't feel as cool as the Cobra. Even though I feel like #1 would be the Cobra, and then the Lorraine, because they just changed that. Then kind of the UDES here. I have them in order, in the likelihood I think that they're going to be in the battle pass. This tank though does have a really good aiming time. It's got decent accuracy, you know, pretty good DPM, and you know, the gun, there's nothing to like hate about it. There's nothing to super love about it. You know, it's got pretty decent pen. The premium round here, you know, it doesn't have a heat premium round, but it basically just adds, you know, additional penetration here, and I believe a little bit of shell velocity. Yeah, 1560. So the shell velocity is lightning fast on this. And then your shell velocity for your 640 meters a second for your HE round. So not the best shell velocity for your HE round. Not that you're going to be shooting much HE out of this. We talked about the armor. A lot of people know how Swedish armor works with the heavy angles and stuff. Mobility on this, you know, that's where you are capped at the 50 kilometers. You do have a really high specific power on this, so you are going to kind of zoom around the map a bit. Some people might throw a turbo on to go a little faster, but a lot of times you're setting up on hills and stuff, so you might want to choose a different piece of equipment. And then camo and also view range, nothing too spectacular there. This tank here is kind of weird. It's been in the game files for a while. This could be a tank coming out in auction or something, or they might throw it in a battle pass with how many Chinese tanks that they've been wanting to throw in there. You know, this tank is a, you know, Chinese tier 9 tank destroyer. I don't know why it's been in the game files for so long. We could definitely see it in a battle pass, or like I said, in an auction. I don't think, you know, it'll come tech tree or anything at any point. But this tank, 560 damage gun, really high penetration, you know, 271. And when it comes to the premium round, you've got that crazy Chinese, so 340 millimeter heat round that they're kind of known for, with the really high heat penetration at tier 9, tier 10 for TDs. And then your HE round, your typical HE round for a gun this caliber. Overall though, when it comes to the gun depression, not great. It does have really good DPM. Accuracy isn't great, but it's also not terrible. Whole armor, you know, it's got a okay amount of armor against lower tiers, not so much against same tiers and higher. And when it comes to mobility, it actually can move around a little bit. When it comes to the top speeds, specific power is a little low, but you still are going to kind of zip around a little bit. You're not going to be super slow and sluggish like some casemate TDs are. And camouflage is okay, and V-range is actually pretty good. Part of the reason why I think this might be unlikely is just because the V-range is high. Doesn't look like they've kind of touched and rebalanced this tank in a while. Next, I don't want to say last but not least, because I feel like the 7.52 is not coming at all, is the Object 590. This tank, I feel like most likely will be a premium or a marathon, because they will make a ton of money off of this thing, just off of looks alone, because it looks pretty cool. And that it's a reverse auto reloading Russian tier 9 medium tank. I don't feel like this is 100% balanced yet, which is why I don't think it's the most likely options, but you never know. They could surprise us. It only has 3 crew members, so not the best crew trainer. But with that reverse auto reloader, you know, this thing's pretty interesting once you start getting into it. So jumping into comparison here, and then let's get into the gun real quick. You know, it's got really high shell velocity, freaking fantastic there. Almost, you know, 1,500 meters a second. Premium round, you know, pretty slow when it comes to the premium AP. It's not a heat, so your penetration, you know, is kind of limited. Low base pen, you know, your premium is just an AP, but very low shell velocity, so you are paying for that there. And then you're, you know, with the auto reloader, most people aren't really going to use HE. Your HE round's nothing, you know, fantastic. But, you know, what kind of makes this tank, I guess, that interesting is it's a very, I guess, modern tank when it comes to the, you know, time period that, you know, we're basically seeing around tier 9. Yes, you're going to be facing off against a lot of, you know, tier 10 tanks and stuff, but overall, this tank, once you, so finishing off the gun stats here, the 5 degrees of gun depression really hurts. I'm not gonna lie, it's really inaccurate. Aiming time's not the best either. It's got okay DPM, but, you know, not fantastic. But it does have that reverse auto reloader, which is nice. But getting down into the armor here, so this thing's fairly compact, and like looking frontally at the thing, it's not going to win any awards with like deflecting like everything. It's not like a heavy tank turret. However, your turret's fairly strong. You do have 2 cupolas on this thing. They're not as tiny as a lot of Russians, but when it comes down to it, they are fairly weak, so you have to keep that in mind. And you can get penned around the turret right on these flat bits. And when it comes to your hull, it's basically all based off of angles. So depending on where people are shooting you, you're going to get ricochets, but heat is really going to mess you up quite a bit in this tank. The side of your tank, though, very interesting. It is fairly thick. Your turret, you know, does have pretty good armor there too. But given the size of this tank and kind of the compactness, getting down to the mobility here, it's actually pretty quick. Specific power is okay, top speed's okay. So it's got like a little bit of everything, and with the reverse auto reloading mechanic, plus, you know, sprinkle a little bit of Russian, you know, specialness in there, I feel like they're gonna tweak this tank a little bit. I don't think it's ready for release yet, but it kind of has the makings for, it seems like it's gonna be a pretty sturdy tank. You know, a really close-up brawler. It's going to be hard fighting against this thing with the reverse auto reloader, because you can dump, you know, all 3 rounds into people, and then you have that first round without that penalty, because it's your fastest loading round. So that's really the thing that you can't really always account for on paper, but it is going to make this tank pretty hard to deal with, you know, when you're playing against it in another medium tank. So this is very interesting. Don't think it's coming, you know, right now. I could be wrong though. And then last but not least is another tier 9 Russian tank. This is a auto loading, so not auto reloader. So this is a 3-round auto loader Russian heavy tank, where this would fit the bill for a unique, battle pass tank. But in the same breath, I don't think this tank, they would release another Russian heavy in the battle pass. I could be wrong though. I feel like this is more slated to be a Russian premium tank instead of a reward tank. But yeah, I've been wrong a ton of times before, so maybe I'll be wrong again. This tank though, again, it's kind of quirky. It's weird for a Russian tank. 390 damage, so it has 3 rounds. Okay pen, it's not great, but at the same time, hitting people 3 times with this thing stings. Overall though, when it comes down to the shell velocity, you're not going to win any awards with this thing. It's not great. HE round with magazines, you're not using those too often. But the kicker with this, it does have a little bit of gun depression because it looks like an oscillating turret. And then accuracy is not great. DPM is just okay given the 3 rounds. But the armor on this thing is actually pretty good. You can't always just go off of the listed stats when it comes to armor. However, this thing, I'm just getting ready to pull this up here. So with how the turret is set up here, you have that really thick armor right in the front, like the gun shield, and your gun's moving up and down here, where you do have those really tall, really weak cupolas. However, you do have this really thick piece of armor. So if people, with the 8 degrees of gun depression are shooting you, unless they're hitting you up here, they're not really going to have any chance at penning you unless they're a tier 10 like tank destroyer or really high tier 10 premium round. And then when it comes to your frontal armor here, you do have a bit of a weak spot, down here. However, this area is pretty strong. It can be penetrated, but adding a little bit of angle to that kind of resolves that, and only really, heat, like high pen heat and stuff, or possibly APCR if it's not going to ricochet, will be going through you. And then overall, when it comes to the sides of this tank, excuse me, before I pop back in here, it looks like it's flat. However, in, I guess quite a few, so like the Object 257 comes to mind, the whole armor actually angles in. You can actually see it right here, so it's very deceiving. Like it almost looks like it'll be rounded based off of the front here. However, it's basically angled inwards, and the sides are fairly thick when it comes to their 70 millimeters, and parts of them, as you kind of get up, it gets a bit thicker up here. However, it's got that very deceiving side armor. So that's kind of one thing going for this tank, even though you have the low DPM, the low shell velocity, and also the accuracy and a little bit of aiming time. This thing does have really good armor overall. Mobility wise, you are capped a bit at mobility. Not the best top speed, not the best specific power, not good camo. It's a heavy though, and the V range isn't really great, but it's not terrible as well. But overall though, I feel like the Cobra is going to be the highest chance that we have for, a battle pass tank for 2022. Then kind of going down Lorraine, UDES, and these are the most, I guess, least likely. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. See you around.